Coming up on this week's FAS TV, we're near Sutherland at Swordale Farm to explore the benefits of Brassica crops on livestock. And we head to Innerhadden Estate near Kinlochranach to see how hydro plays a crucial role in sustaining the future of this Highland estate. In the north of Scotland, near Sutherland, Sandy Watt, along with his mother Morag and brother David, farm at Swordale Farm. Swordale is a 100-acre south-facing unit which has been farmed by the family since 1977. The farm benefits from early grass growth in the summer, and Sandy has introduced Brassica crops into the rotation to provide homegrown feed for his Pedigree Aberdeen Angus cattle.
Our livestock system, well, we run 40 to 50 Pedigree cows. It's 40 at the moment. We peeled back a little bit this year, but our goal is to get back up to 50 Pedigree Aberdeen Angus breeding cows. That's just what we were always brought up with the Anguses. My dad had Belgian Blues beforehand, but we transitioned into the Anguses in 1992, so we're over 30 years in the breed now. The reason we went into it was really because it's easier management. It suits the farm system for us. So it's a breed that we really see a future for now. So especially in the challenging climate we've got, and the when we're trying to reduce our carbon footprint, I think it's one for the future. So the livestock system we're running, it's an elite high health, so we test for everything because our market has to be that we're selling Pedigree bulls, and they usually go to Stirling. We're going to try a few at Carlisle, hopefully over the next year or two as well. We do sell Pedigree heifers, pure heifers, but anything that doesn't make the grade goes off as a forward store. We used to obviously have our own butcher shop, which is Swordale Farm Butchers, which so I'm trained as a butcher as well. So we used to finish them for the shop, but they go off as forward store now. So I think when I'm looking for the type of cattle that we want here, I'm looking for something that's going to be easy doing cattle, easy fleshing cattle, not a grain fed system, because that doesn't suit our farm. It's got to be done on a forage based system with as little input as possible from bottom protein. And we want something that's going to be long, with not too much wastage on it, so a high yield for the butchers. The other part to our livestock system, which we've introduced really over the last couple of seasons, is sheep, which we hadn't had. We hadn't had sheep since would have been about the mid-90s last time we had them. We brought them back in really to help control the grass, the weeds in the grass sward, and really quite amazing just how much it's helping that growth. So what we do is we put the sheep in first and follow up with the cattle in after for the grazing system. We do operate where we can a paddock graze system as well. The sheep numbers we're running, currently running about small numbers, about 50, but we are building. We're hoping to build up to about maybe 250 breeding ewes, along with our 40 to 50 Pedigree cows, which will be we're a small unit, but that's what we're trying to achieve, is maximum output whilst improving our forage growth on farm and our sward growth. We've put in Brassicas. It's a winter graze mix that we use. So it's 60% turnips, stubble turnips. It's 35% forage rape and 5% kale. And we put that in. Usually goes in start of July. So what we do is we spray off. We'll direct drill in the seed, and we then put out granular lime at the moment, because we're just new into the system. We're only a few years into it, and I think the key is going to be identifying future where we're going to be planting in the future, and then we can hopefully lower the cost a little bit by doing that, by putting out lime, and then we put some fertilizer on, and then it takes a good hold, because we're quite a heavy wet-based farm, so it's a heavy ground, so it does take a good hold here. We get a good crop. Actually, we did plant 2 seasons ago. We planted 50% kale and 50% this winter graze mixture, and we found that the winter graze mixture had a lot better hold than the kale. Obviously, with the stubble turnips, it helps break the ground up as well. So it has an added value that that it's getting that rotation. It's breaking the ground up for that rotation. We usually strip graze. When we're strip grazing in the winter, we usually move the fence. It's usually daily, and we usually move it sort of about 3 to 4 feet, depending on the weather. It's if you get a wet day or a lot of snow, you have to be careful because they're just wastage. So if we get that situation, I usually move it twice a day, depending on the climate at the time. For our rotation, we use Brassicas because it's extending our grazing period by probably about 3 months of the year. So that's that is our goal here, is we want to have cattle utilising grazing for as long as possible, which will help long-term decrease our carbon footprint. Also, it's a cheap source of feed, and we use the rotation to follow up the next season with a whole crop. What we've done this year is the first year we've done it actually, and it was a whole crop with peas, oats, and a clover-rich grass, and that's the first year. And the next year, because it's undersown, that's going into your new grass silage. So here we've got an example of how brassicas are working for our system within our rotation. You can see the field we have this year with the winter graze mixture in it, which the cows are currently strip grazing. This is this year's rotation for this field. The field behind us over there, that was in brassicas last year, and that was the one that had a whole crop silage in it, undersown with clover-rich grass. So the whole crop's been taken off, and you can just see how rich that grass is looking for coming towards the end of December now, and it's been grazed quite extensively with sheep laterally in the autumn. Our main motivation to put in forage crops was, like I said, it's extending our grazing period. It's reducing our overheads because it's a lot cheaper to put in. We've worked it out. We've put in a paddock there for the young stock. It's an acre, 1.6 acres, which costs us about £255 to sow. So the whole idea is that we're going to the heifers and the steers are out on that, and the idea is that we're going to cut off the feed that they would usually be getting, 1 to 2 kilos a day. So we're going to cut that off, and they're going to get they're going to go to the Brassicas, and they also get the whole crop as well, which is part of that rotation, because that's going in after that. So it's all homegrown feed, which is what our goal is, and we can reduce the amount of bought-in protein for those young stock, and they'll be ready to go off as forward stores come April. So it'll be interesting to see just how they do on it.
Brassicas work well at Swordale Farm, but there are some important factors farmers should consider before introducing them into their rotation.
Challenges we face, it's not really faced a lot of challenges from where we are. It's grown very well here, like I say, because we're a heavy farm, and it tends to do very well. I remember that from being a young lad when my dad used to grow stubble turnips, and they'd always grow well. So that's half the reason we went back to it actually. Was it's always done, but that's what I would say, is that the wetter the field, you'll get a wee bit more wastage, especially with the stubble turnips. And obviously, the thing with young stock as well, young stock are maybe a bit, takes them a bit longer to get into eat the stubble turnips. They go for the forage rape and the kale more so, and they'll leave a wee bit of wastage. The cows do clean it up. So that's one challenge, but it's just moving the fence slow and steady, I think, and just trying to get them into it. Also because of the rumen as well, because you don't want to be giving them too much just at once, especially to start off with. I think advice would be that that when you're going to go into this system is plan ahead and make sure you get your lime out, try and get it out 1 to 2 years before on the parks you're going to be using, so you don't have to use granular lime and put a short-term fix just to get the crop in.
On the outskirts of Kinlochranach in Highland, Perthshire, lies Innerhadden Estate. Innerhadden is a 5,500 acre estate owned and managed by Richard Barclay. Innerhadden has a varied portfolio, including a deer farm, forestry, properties, and wild deer stalking on the hills. Hydro is a key enterprise on the estate, utilising high volumes of water from the hills to generate electricity and provide a sustainable income stream throughout the year.
So we've had a hydro here for nearly 15 years now, and it was really a driver to try and find an income source that would help run the estate. Highland estates are not great sources of income, and we really were very passionate about running the estate, but also living here and employing local people and trying to make it work locally. And to do that, you need to diversify into every source of income you can possibly get hold of. So hydro schemes have been around for a long, long time, but Innerhadden Hydro is a run-of-river hydro scheme. So what we do is we take water out of the burn high up on the hill, feed it down a pipe, it spins a turbine, which turns a generator and creates electricity. That's it in a simplistic form. The burn is always the priority, so the water always feeds the burn before it feeds the hydro. So there's a notch in the intake which allows water to go down the burn, so the burn never dries out. We only take excess water effectively. We take excess water up to a certain point and then till we're at full power, and then we return the water back into the burn further downstream. At full capacity, we through the turbine, it's about 0.5 cubic metre of water a second. The levels of water we take depend on how much water is in the burn. So in high flow situations, we can take a maximum of about 0.5 cubic metre a second. And then at low flow levels, we take much less water. It all depends on how much water is available to us. Our hydro, this hydro here, is 1.4 megawatt. It powers our immediate house and estate, properties around it, and then the excess power goes into the grid and is sold to the grid. So it's a great way to keep things running and ticking over. Setting up the hydro was we were quite an early run-of-river hydro scheme, so you have to go through all sorts of legislation and environmental surveys and planning. It probably took us really 3.5, 4 years to get planning to build it, and then a year to build. So it's quite a big scheme. It's got quite a long pipeline and 2 different intakes, so it's quite a major operation. The build costs we funded ourselves, and you then get a feed-in tariff on your electricity because it's green energy. So you get a payment for 20 years on the over and above the income for the electricity, based on what you produce. For us, it's been a absolutely fantastic boon to the estate. It's allowed us to develop the estate a bit further and put some money back into the estate. It's been a bit of a lifesaver, to be honest, for many Highland estates. And I think all Highland estates or estates, any farmer really needs to look at every possible source of income he can get hold of, because usually when something's up, something else is down, and it all evens out in the end. But you always want something to be up when something else is down. So it's been great.
Join us next week as we're back at Innerhadden, looking specifically at their deer farm. And we speak to Alan Snedden from the Venison Advisory Service to explore the practicalities of diversifying into deer.
Hello, I'm Fiona Burnett from SRUC, and welcome to this crop update for the Farm Advisory Service. Conditions obviously look a little frosty and harsh. We've got snow sitting over much of the country as we're filming here in Midlothian in the middle of January. But actually winter crops as they went in are in pretty good conditions. So we had a very good drilling period, quite a wide period of drilling, lots of crops going in fairly early. Herbicides went on for the most part, so weed control has been good. And then we went into the autumn with that slight concern that crops were advanced, that conditions were warm, and that we potentially had lots of risk of aphids disease and early problems like that. But in fact, we saw very few. Slug levels were low, and aphids, we treated a few fields, but again, fairly low levels. Conditions deteriorated fairly quickly with a very heavy rainfall event in November, so field operations kind of stopped then. And then we had a very cold period in November as well, which was probably helpful for checking those advanced crops and just checking some of that pest and disease risk. So conditions fairly good, and then very wet conditions over the new year, some flooding in fields, and we're back to snow conditions now. So for all, spring operations might seem a bit away as we're looking at snow cover. In fact, with wind and warmer conditions, things will improve fairly quickly. So a few things to be getting on with at the moment. Soil testing, clearly where you're planning your spring crops. So testing for things like PCN in potatoes, clubroot, but also just your routine nutrients if you're planning spring barley, for example. Other things to think about, once conditions improve, start walking the crops again, looking for aphids and looking for the diseases like rhynchosporium in barley or yellow rust in wheat, which will begin to drive your need for T-knots, which should really only be, if and when needed. But it's probably also sensible to start thinking now about your crop protection programme. Of course, you adjust that as you go through the season depending on what you see, but if you think about it now, you can build in the mixtures and alternations that will help you reduce the risk of fungicide resistance, and just some sensible pre-ordering of product as well, where that allows you to avoid any last-minute chopping and changing.